Hello, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Black Women's Struggle for the Vote Part 2. I would like to thank everyone for logging in today. My name is Dr. Chiquita Howard-Bostic. I'm the Associate Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity at Shepherd University, and I am so pleased to thank our sponsors for this event, the Byrd Center, CATF, EPAC of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, and the League of Women Voters of Jefferson County. I welcome everyone. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Ray Smock. He's the interim director of the Robert C. Byrd Center for Congressional History and Education. He was the historian of the United States House of Representatives and was co-editor of the Booker T. Washington papers and a biographer of Booker T. Washington. Hi, Dr. Smock.
How are you?
All right.
Good to see you. So my role tonight is to introduce the historical Mary Church Terrell, and we will later see the theatrical Mary Church Terrell. This marvelous woman was born the year Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and she didn't pass until just before the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954. So she, during the course of from the 1890s through the 1950s, she thrust herself into every aspect of the civil rights and women's rights. And yet each generation, it seems we have to discover our heroes all over again and sometimes rediscover the history that we forgotten or maybe never even learned. So I first discovered Mary Church Terrell when I was working on the Booker T. Washington papers and at the University of Maryland in the mid-1960s. And I didn't know then that I would spend almost 20 years immersed in the life and times of Booker T. Washington. And one of my jobs was to annotate or to explain in footnotes the names of every person mentioned in the correspondence of Booker T. Washington and thousands of boxes of letters containing more than 1 million items. And Mary Church Terrell and her husband Robert, a district judge in Washington D.C., appeared often in Booker T. Washington's correspondence. He and Mrs. Washington were friends with the Terrells. That is, when they weren't arguing over politics. While I wrote thousands of footnotes describing Black men and women of the era from the Civil War to the 1920s, unless they were significant to our story, they would only get brief mention. Mind you, I was only researching her for the purposes of a footnote, but she was so involved in everything imaginable related to African-American affairs that she warranted a whole page. And I'll just give you a brief synopsis of some of the things that I said about her in that note many years ago. Mary Elizabeth Church Terrell, 1863 to 1954, was born in Memphis, the daughter of a Robert R. Church Sr. He was called the boss of Beale Street. He had risen from slavery to become a powerful political leader and financier in Memphis. And in Robert Church's fortune was estimated at more than $1 million. And it came from investments in real estate and also in saloons and gambling houses in the Black section of Memphis, especially along the very colorful Beale Street. Reared by her mother, Lisa Ayers Church, after a separation from her father, Mary Church spent most of her time in the North, attending Oberlin College in Ohio, graduating in 1884. And then she taught at Wilberforce and also in Ohio for a couple of years and earned a master's degree at Oberlin. And in 1891, she married Robert Terrell, who she met while teaching school in Washington, D.C. And they became very prominent Washington members of Washington society, both Black and white. She founded the National Association of Colored Women in 1896 and served as its first president. And though her husband secured a judgeship through the influence of Booker T. Washington and his friendship with President Teddy Roosevelt, Mary Church Terrell took a more independent course. And in 1909, she became a charter member of the newly formed NAACP. And she fought the good fight all these years her own way. She was often at odds with the prominent race leaders of the day, including Booker T. Washington and also W.B. Du Bois And while a staunch Republican, when in the days when most African Americans were still Republicans, she often fought with the presidents of her own party. Um, her story is coming back into the pages of history, uh, largely through the work of historians now who are looking deeply into both African Americans' history and women's history. And in the first part of the program, if you were joined us for that one, you heard Sarah Jones talk about her remarkable book, Vanguard, which covers a remarkable sweep of the history of African American women and their contributions to the civil rights and virtually every aspect of our society. So she's coming back. There was a new biography of her written just this past year, and the title of the new book is Unceasing Militant. And I think that's just about a perfect title to describe this woman who had so many activities. And the new biography is written by a scholar named Allison Parker. And I love this sentence. She says, Mary Church Terrell is what real action looks like. I love that. So tonight, along with all of you, I'm looking forward to learning how this dynamic woman got woven into American theater in one of the most compelling plays that the CATF ever produced. It's one of my all-time favorites, and I've seen a lot of them over the years. And it was just a special, my Lord, what a night. And I love the interplay of the historical characters woven into the magic insights and the truths that come from theater and from literature and then from history. There's many places that we can find truths. And while I never sat in Albert Einstein's parlor like the characters did in the play, I must say that I was recalled an event as I watched that play that more than 40 years ago when I did sit in Albert Einstein's house in the kitchen where a group of us had gathered from Princeton University Press to talk about the editing of the Albert Einstein papers. So the Byrd Center and the is proud to partner with the Contemporary American Theater Festival and exploring both art, history, and all the wonderful things that we can gather from the experience. And I thank you very much, and I look forward to a very interesting evening.
All right. Hello. I would love to introduce right now Miss Lizan Mitchell. Miss Lizan Mitchell has performed on Broadway and off-Broadway in several plays, including Having Our Say, both on Broadway and the national tour, Electra, Brownsville's Song, For Colored Girls, and Salt and Ma Rose. Her work has also been seen around the world. Many of you may remember her performance at the CATF in the play Dead and Breathing. She later played the same role in London, Liverpool, and New York. Lizan's many regional credits include Richard III at Shakespeare Theater, The Tempest at the Old Globe, and Arena Stage's production of A Raisin in the Sun, of which she won the Helen Hayes Award. You may also have seen Lizan in a variety of films, which include The Human Stain, The Preacher's Wife, Of Monsters and Men, Detroit, and We'll Never Have Paris, or perhaps you've seen her on television and on Law and Order, Unbreakable, Kimmy Schmidt, Deadbeat, Sesame Street, and The Wire. Currently, Lizan can be heard on the Public Theater's auto streaming of the play Shadowland by Erica Dickerson Dispenza. Miss Mitchell knew she wanted to be an actress from the at a very young age, and she was lovingly supported by her mother and grandmother to achieve those goals. While participating in a march in her hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, a man approached her and asked where would she be going to college. It turns out he was from A&T State University and invited her to study theater there because Dr. Kilimanjaro said, "You are an actress. Welcome to the stage, Miss Lizan Mitchell.
Thank you so much, Dr. Howard-Bostic, for that lovely, lovely, lovely introduction. And it is a joy to be here. You know, sometimes when you stop doing a role, you think you'll never have the opportunity to kind of relive it again. And so this opportunity to talk about Mary Church Terrell is just an honor. So thank you very much. I thank everyone for inviting me and for this opportunity. And thank you, CATF, for thinking about My Lord, What a Night as a presentation at the festival.
I know we're going to be so delighted to hear what you have to say this evening, because I am so excited. I had the opportunity to talk to you for a little while today, and I just cannot wait to have this conversation. So, I mean, we'll set us up. Tell us a little bit about the story of the play. You know, not so much to give everything away,
Right,
but you know, tell us a little bit to get us positioned in the conversation.
Well, the play is the story of the beginning of the lifelong friendship between the great, renowned contralto, Miss Marian Anderson, and the brilliant, genius scientist and great humanitarian, Albert Einstein. What happened is that Miss Anderson was playing at a concert hall in Princeton, New Jersey. And after the presentation was over, she proceeded to go along with an entourage of fans to the hotel that she had accommodations for that night. Well, surprisingly, the hotel manager informs her that they don't allow Blacks to stay in the hotel. So there she is, among her fans, but with no place to stay. Albert Einstein, who has always been a huge fan of Miss Marian Anderson, humbly offers lodging at his home, and she accepts. So, also, one of the people who tried to see Miss Anderson, well, let me preface this. A lot of times with playwrights and screenwriters, when the material is historically driven, they will set up a what if scenario. So the what if scenario in My Lord, What a Night is when Miss Mary Church Terrell comes to the concert and is not seated because they only have a limited number of seats for Black people. She is approached by a policeman and they go through uh, a little argument. And then she notices that the fans are on their way to accompany Miss Anderson because Prince is a small town and everything is close by. So she joins in with the fans that go to the hotel and finds out also, as does Professor Einstein, that Miss Anderson will not be accommodated. Soon after that, she finds out where Mr. Professor Einstein lives, and by that time, a whole entourage of press have surrounded his home. And she goes in and tries to convince Miss Anderson to go back to the hotel, take the entourage with her, and kind of disgrace them into making her accommodated for the night. So that's essentially the first act. I won't tell you what happens to resolve that. And I'll say the reason that I'm not divulging so much information is because this play was to have been presented at the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C. in 2020, and due to the pandemic was delayed. So in case anybody in the audience is going to have a chance to see this, that didn't see this at the Contemporary American Theater Festival presentation, I'm not going to divulge the cliffhangers. So proceeding on to the second act, which happens a time later. Miss Anderson has the occasion to be at Professor Einstein's house again because she still, cannot find lodging. So Mr. Terrell has spoken to Professor Einstein and asked if she can come and have a conversation with Miss Anderson. And the conversation is about the Daughters of the American Revolution's refusal to let Miss Anderson sing at Constitution Hall. And Ms. Terrell, being the activist that she is proposing a huge conglomerate of protesters, from unions, from political institutions, from women's organizations, all to protest this in a very big gathering at Constitution Hall. And she is proposing this to Miss Anderson. And Miss Anderson's answer and Professor Einstein's answer to this is the cliffhanger. So that's the setup for My Lord, What a Night. And I must say that it culminates with Miss Anderson singing My Lord, What a Morning, which is the original name of a beautiful, beautiful song that the playwright has really creatively and ingeniously twisted to My Lord, What a Night, to honor the occasion of this meeting.
Wow, well, you have set us up to prepare us to watch this if we haven't already. And so, okay, I want to get down into some meat and potatoes here. So all of these amazing, amazing plays and productions that you've been a part of, how did you research? What type of research did you have to do, or what was necessary for you to embody the character of Mary Church Terrell?
Well, I tell you, with this particular character, it sits very, very close to home for me. Number one, this is a living human being who has offered her life in service. So it's an awesome, challenging honor to portray her. So I have to be very, very careful about my research. Number two, my grandmother, is of this generation and went through some similar kinds of things that Miss Mary Church Terrell went through. So I figure I'm honoring ancestors of blood and not of blood in this particular portrayal. So I'm kind of nervous about this because this is quite a task, but it's an honor. And fortunately, Mary Church Terrell has an autobiography, A Colored Woman in a White World. So I don't have to wonder about, well, is this true or isn't this true? Or, did this person have a bias? Because she has written it all out and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful read. It's not like one of those dense kinds of documentation. It's very, very readable. So primarily when I'm preparing for a role, what is important is the time era, because it's kind of like the set for a play. Like if you come in and you just have gotten there and the play hasn't started, but the curtains are open and you see the set, you almost have an idea of where we're going to be, where this story is going to be situated. And I find it important because it's really easy to act like, 2019, 2017, when you're in a whole different era and people talk differently, people communicated differently. They, pardon this siren, that is my neighborhood. It'll be over soon.
Really nice background. It was like all coming together,
I hear you. Yeah. And communicated differently, live differently. So you want to drop what your current way of life is and take on what is happening at that particular era. And of course, this particular era that Miss Mary Church Terrell was raised in is rife with history. I couldn't ask for a bigger piece of the pie to eat off of, so to speak. So I found out, I'm gonna refer to my cards here because I want to be accurate and I don't want to skip anything. So Miss Mary Church Terrell was born during the time of emancipation. So she never had the experience of being a slave or being an enslaved person. Her parents, however, were both enslaved and both were of mixed ancestry. So not all the time, but in the case of her parents, there was a certain amount of privilege that came with them being born of mixed ancestry. For instance, her mother was taught how to read and had lessons in French. Um, Her father was actually the child of the plantation owner, and he was given certain kinds of accesses, certainly not the access of a free person, but he wasn't as isolated as most of the enslaved population was. And so first off, she is light skinned, and so that means that automatically she is viewed in a more acceptable way by a lot of people. Secondly, she comes from, in that time, extreme wealth. Her father was one of the richest Black men in the South, a millionaire during that time, which has to be equated to a billionaire of this time. This is not to say that her mother was not equally prosperous on her own. Her mother owned a hair salon that was um, really the majority of her customers came from a white base. She had come up with these wiglets and hair pieces that were phenomenal, and she was much sought after. Even after her mother and father divorced and her mother moved to New York, she had another shop and was very, very successful. I hear that the first piece of property that was bought through her wealth, not through her husband's wealth. So here she is with parents that have shown her what can be done as a Black person. Okay. Insofar as her education is concerned, her mother realized that the education, she's from Memphis, so the education in Memphis for Black people is subpar. It's a two-room classroom and a basement. I know I was recently talking to a friend of mine from Charleston, South Carolina, who's 92 now, and she told me that the school that she had went from first to eighth grade in rural Charleston, and all the grades were in one room, all taught by one person. There was no high school. So she had to leave and go to another town, find lodging with other people just so she could go to high school. So in order to avoid all of this, and because they had the wherewithal, Mary's mother sent her to, when she was 6 or 8 years old, the number varies from what you read, but anyway, she went to Yellow Springs, Ohio, and was educated at Antioch College Preparatory School. And at that time, she is the only Black person in her class during this whole time. And I have a particular resonance with her with that, because like when I went to one of the first integrated high schools in my hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, and when it came time for my physics class and one of my math classes, I was the only female and the only Black. And it was very hard for me to pass the course because I felt so alienated. But pass she did, and she went on to be one of the first Black people to graduate from Oberlin College. And she took on the gentleman's path for educating herself. She could have taken on the ladies' path, but she took on the gentleman's path, which was courses in Greek, Latin, math, and science, which she excelled in all of them. And after that, she wanted to further educate herself. So her father paid for her to go to Germany, to go to Europe, and to be educated for 2 years, where she became fluent in German, Italian, and French. As a matter of fact, she was the first African-American woman to speak at the Berlin National Congress for Women, and she gave the speech in German and in French. And I'm saying to myself, oh my goodness. Ooh. So with all of these benefits, why in the world would she choose to be a social activist? It was a choice that her father thoroughly disagreed with. He wanted her to be a philanthropist and a socialite, and felt like working degraded her class, her stature. So I said, now, what would make her do this? And then I I realized this is in the era of the reconstruction, and post-construction. So we have this era, the first era, the two eras that I know of, two eras of the new Negro. And this is the first era of the new Negro. And this for the first time, and this is like just unimaginable to me, but for the first time, Black people were able to define themselves. They became free of the centuries old horrendous stereotypes that dominated every form of mass media. And so these monstrous caricatures and the accompanying rhetoric that defined Black people as 3/4 of a human being, incapable of taking care of themselves and morally degraded, was in the process of being transformed, and Black people began to create their own image based on the truth of who they really were.
How empowering. So empowering. I'm
Isn't
just
it?
listening
Isn't
to
it?
this. So empowering. So empowering. I don't know who else in here is empowered. I'm empowered. Carry on, Lizan. Keep going.
So and so this
Great.
shift in consciousness, this affirmation of worth, is definitely proven by the meteoric rise in Black prosperity in a people who in many instances had never even handled money.
Mhm.
So along with this affluence came a commitment
Mhm.
and a responsibility to uplift those less fortunate. So Mary Church Terrell was aware of her privilege and chose to use it for the benefit of humanity.
What a powerful, can you say that again? Because I don't know if anybody missed that message there, but that's a humanitarian message that we might want to repeat, that she would understand her privilege and she would make a decision to use her privilege to benefit those who were in need.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Good message. So
this is the bounty that my research yielded.
Yes. That is so powerful. And I mean, just the ability to put those shoes on, to be able to just relive that moment and that power, that the ability to be on that mountain with her, that, oh my goodness, that's amazing. The next question is going to shift a little bit beyond you and more into your work institutionally. So we understand what motivated you and what allowed you to get into, her character. But moving beyond that, this type of work that you were able to do by presenting this character, how do you think theater as an institution, how do you think theater can, I guess, support other ideas like this, especially, I guess, with topics like voting rights or topics about, empowerment?
Well, for me, that's a two-part answer.
Mm-hmm.
We realize now that institutionalized racism has permeated our lives in almost every way. On some level, we can spot it on every way.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it is being exposed, and people are changing. Their decisions about what life is going to be like in the future is changing, and they're making decisions to evidence that it's not just rhetoric anymore. It's not just, well, oh, what can I do? It's this is what I'm doing, and which is really wonderful. I think it's going to lead to the kind of world that we've never seen before, but which we should have had a long time ago, but we grow as we should. And I don't want to grow too fast because I don't want to backtrack and have to redo it again. So Oh,
One day at
so
a time, one day at a time.
yeah. So like theater, you know, and entertainment has been influenced by the choices that most resonated with European American values and what is considered classic, what is considered important has come from that set of values. So I've been doing theater for about 30 years now. I performed at almost every regional theater in the United States. And I can say that until relatively recently, the time that you knew that you were going to have work was Black History Month,
Right.
you know? And even with that choice, it didn't come from what necessarily African American people wanted to see. It came from the same people that were just, you know, that made decisions about European American offerings always being served. So we didn't have anyone of color in decision-making capacities about what was being presented. So in order to personally gratify myself, I made a conscious decision to place stories that come from African American playwrights at the top of my agenda so that no matter where I am, I'm telling my own story. It makes me feel more comfortable and it makes me feel like I'm honoring the gifts that I have been given, like Miss Mary Church Terrell. I can say now that things are changing. Uh, more decision making positions are being held by people of color, and I'm glad because I believe, along with African American people, Asian American people, indigenous people, all cultures have invaluable information for humanity, and we can only develop fully when all of those stories are out there for us to draw from. So, and insofar as voting is concerned, voting rights and government, I can tell you how remiss I am personally in my knowledge of how government operates on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. I think I have been half asleep for a long time. I look back to Miss Mary Church Terrell and all of the outstanding men and women of her time, and not even, I mean, and how that has passed on. I think of Ida Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, just all of the who gave their lives so that we would be better informed about why our lives are shaped like they are. So I believe since theater is my turf, I think that we need to have more offerings that engage us in the workings of government and in the workings of voting in a creative, imaginative way that piques the interest and sustains the interests of young people and for people who do not believe that the right to vote is important.
Right. Thank you
Certainly,
so much for being so vulnerable about that. I mean, I think that's so important for people to do. And again, I hope everybody is really listening. I hope you're listening. I hope we're chiming into this idea that is presented, that Lizan can say to us, you know, I need to become more informed myself. And I think that we should have this happen for us together in ways that, you know, connect with our passion, you know, what we love to do. And so kind of connecting that the theater with what's happening every day on local, state, federal, national levels, and keep us informed and be willing. Like Lizan said, look, she's decided to be intentional about the roles that she's playing and about what she's doing, but saying to us, we have to be vulnerable and admit that we don't know, and then come together and create that type of change. That was amazing. I love that. I love that.
I
Tell
thank
us
you. But
more.
I think of all the
Yes.
women of Miss Mary Church Terrell's time, and how they educated about government, educated. I mean, most of the times in school, they're not even teaching civics anymore, which gives you a knowledge, I mean, of government, from grade school and high school, it's not even there. And I can't help but think that that might be intentional, but we can change it.
Oh my goodness. If you were sitting at the table with Miss Terrell, what do you think she would say? What would she say about this, about what we're talking about? You think she would say some of the same things, or would she be, maybe more aggressive than we are about it?
I know she would be more aggressive, and I know she would say, who dropped the ball?
Right. Very important questions. And sometimes I think we have something to worry about. We are here and doing our craft. And so we want a position at the table. And so you said some important things, like she had status, she had, her family members had wealth. And so she had the power. She probably had the ability to say who messed up, whereas, we're fighting to get a piece of the pie and to be at the table in the first place. It's so interesting, the power dynamic that you expressed her having, and just what that means right now. Who actually can do that? Who of us, who has the voice, who can say who messed up, who's not doing what they're supposed to do. So that's so interesting. Yes, I'd like to hear more about these dynamic leaders of all of these different backgrounds, because you talked about something really important. Like, it's not just, it's not only the Black woman's voice, it's so many other voices that are significant. So yes, I'm interested.
Yeah, so like I was really surprised. I just did a piece called "The Woman's Party," and it talked about Alice Paul and the Woman's Party, and I got a little inkling about how many other people were disregarded other than African American women during the time of the suffragist movement, among mainly middle class and upper class white women. And it was just amazing to me what I found out. I found out that as far back as Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, they had spent summers with the Seneca Native people, the Seneca indigenous people, prior to their establishment of their movement, to study how indigenous women already had the kinds of rights that they were trying to get.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's so interesting. That's so interesting, how certain groups of people have ways of life, right? And how the contemporary society would pose those groups as being savages or being undereducated or unable. So there was this relationship between the reality or the truth and the actual practices that were going on every day.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just happy that, I'm happy that the truth is coming out, because it's a bright light, and all of this other non-truth cannot stand the light. But we need
So
to see it first.
there's a question in the chat, really interesting, and kind of aligns with what we're saying about empowerment. How can we make theater more affordable or accessible so that some of these stories can be provided, so that the empowerment can happen on many different levels. So we said that there should be something done. How can we make it cheaper, you think, or accessible?
We have a theater company composed of actors called Quicksilver Theater Company. And what I have begun to do personally is to go to, I just now got through with a class called Launch and Grow, and it's about Black women entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And my purpose for, and there's another institute here in New York that trains producers. So it's when you're in those power positions that you are able to shift the price of the ticket, hopefully.
Mhm.
So it is those of us who are determined to change what that looks like. It's up to us to do that. Right now, it costs, like, for us, we're a small theater company, but
Mhm.
it will cost us about $10,000 to mount a show. We're talking about the set, we're talking about the publicity, we're talking about paying actors, we're talking about insurance, we're talking, just a multiple of items that go into the making of a production. And what I want to know is how that can be financed without depending on grants. So to answer the person's question, that's something that I'm looking into too, because I think now it is horrendous that you go to see a Broadway show and it's going
Mhm.
to cost you multiple. If you're going to take your family, you're going to spend thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And in our case, case of an African American, you're going to see the Lion King. That's your story. What? What is this?
A lot.
But it is like
Um,
it is like, the tyranny of capitalism and the greed that ensues. But I believe that paradigm is going to be changed also. It is no longer workable with how we want to live as human beings. So I haven't solved it, but I'm on it.
All right. One step in the right direction, right? Many steps in the right direction. Um,
Is it time for us to get to those ladies who were okay? So like
yeah.
there were a number of women that are contemporaries of Miss Mary Church Terrell who were doing fantastic work in their own communities. And the first one I'd like to speak of, and this is just briefly, but I was just amazed because sometimes, you get into your own people and you don't realize that there are many other people doing the same thing that you are doing. And I think about Reverend Barber's Poor People's Campaign and how he has brought so many diverse people together and the power that it has. And I was just thinking that, it's not too late for us to begin to work together,
Right.
So anyway, the first person I'd like to acknowledge is Marie Bottineau Baldwin. And Miss Baldwin moved to Washington, D.C. to fight for the treaty rights of her people. She is a member of the Chippewa tribe. And she is among the leaders of universal suffrage, doing work with her people and in Washington, D.C. at the same time as Miss Mary Church Terrell was. I was very, and I was shocked to find out that indigenous people were not granted citizenship until 1924. That has to be mind-boggling. I mean, you're going to be granted citizenship to your own land. It's just amazing. Also, I'd like to, another person that really surprised me was Mabel Ping Hua Lee. And Miss Ping Hua Lee was an activist since she was a teenager, supporting the rights of women, advocating for universal suffrage, in spite of the Chinese Exclusion Act, which said that immigrants and could not vote at all. But she pursued anyway and continued throughout her life to push for universal suffrage, a contemporary of Miss Mary Church Terrell. Also, there is Emma Nakawima. And Miss Nakawima was an accomplished writer, an accomplished jurist, and also fought, advocated for universal suffrage in the territory of Hawaii. And lastly, not lastly, but just as the last word person that I'm acknowledging is Maria Guadalupe Evangelina de Lopez. And Mr. Lopez is a Latinx advocate of universal suffrage who worked throughout Southern California speaking Spanish to people to train them in government and in voting rights. Also a contemporary of Mary Church Terrell.
I love this. What is really, I think, catching me here is this idea or this push for like collaboration and an understanding of like these like messages and just this common idea that women are out here fighting for a voice and fighting for the ability to be on a platform where decisions are made. And it reminds me of the personal is political slogan by Patricia Hill Collins and how she's saying that, we have a number of unique experiences that, women may encounter, but that you use those experiences as a platform to push people to understand the needs and what we need to do and how we need to do it. And that we all should be inspired, no matter what we look like, no matter what our cultures are, right? To be life changers like you, Lizan, a life changer, an absolute fabulous life changer who is encouraging, movement. I think we have a special treat for everybody. I want you to take a deep breath. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna take a moment and we're gonna think about all of these women, these amazing women that were introduced by Lizan, and we're gonna have what we call my Lord, what a morning moment, but we may have a what an evening moment. And let's see what happens and let's see if you're moved. So I'm gonna give you a moment to just breathe for a second, and then we're gonna hear what happens when we have a my Lord, what a morning moment. Let's do that together.
When the stars begin to when the stars begin to fall, don't quit, oh my worldly ways, to join that heavenly band. Don't quit, oh my worldly ways, to join that heavenly band. My Lord, what a morning. My Lord, what a morning. Oh, my Lord, what a morning. When the stars begin to fall, when the stars begin to
Thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This voice, this powerful voice today, hearing the trumpets sounding, waking the nations, and when the stars begin to fall, when we understand what our calling is, when we understand what we need to do together, when we understand what that is like for us, when we come together collectively, we will have a my Lord, what a morning moment. Nicole Davis, who just sang this amazing song for us, she is a vocal musician in opera, art song, and the presentation of Negro spirituals. And she's a graduate of Shenandoah University, located in Winchester, Virginia. She obtained her bachelor's degree in vocal performance with an opera concentration in 2003 and a master's degree in combined music ed, church music, and voice in 2006. She's been in several productions as well, like the Byrd Bride, the Marriage of Figaro, and just to name a few. She's very notable for her presentation as she showed us today. She is the Minister of Music and organist of Faith Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C., and she's been the Upper Marlboro school music teacher at Powhatan School, a private institution located in Boyce, Virginia, for 18 years. Thank you so much for taking us where we needed to be this evening. And following that, I am going to ask Lizan, what did Mary Church Terrell's legacy, as we were able to feel the power of what it means to have that moment, what did that legacy represent for you? What does it mean for you today?
I tell you, when I first started researching Miss Mary Church Terrell, I could not believe how many things she was involved in, and not just, hopping from one thing to another, but her thorough involvement in everything that she touched. And I thought about the great satisfaction you get from the fulfillment of your purpose. And so for me, it means that the best thing that I can do for myself is to offer my gifts as effectively and as respectfully as possible to humanity.
Mm. Is there
Sorry.
anything, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is there anything in particular that you wanted people to learn during your portrayal of her? Was there something in particular that you wanted to share of her?
And it might seem like a small thing, but I noticed in the way that her mind moved, it didn't get hung up in disagreement, in argument. She would always think of another way that this can be handled, another way that this can be communicated. She was not, from what I can see, if you're ego driven, then it's very important that you be right. But if you're about if you're on purpose, it's very important that you accomplish what needs to be done. And sometimes it has to be adjusted. Sometimes it has to be modified. Sometimes it has to be incorporated. And to be able to have that kind of facility, I think is what makes things work. And I can say that with her background of education and all the different arenas that she had to function in, because she was very shrewd politically also, it enabled her to not get hung up. And I think
Very
that's really, really,
intelligent.
really important.
Yes, very, very intelligent, very, very smart move, just being strategic about how you deal with people and then leading to positive outcomes.
And
Wow.
to come from your heart, because if authenticity, people can tell when they're being mentally manipulated,
Mhm.
particularly now, because there's so many distractions out here and so many means of manipulation. Some people just shut down and just keep it all at bay, because you don't know what's real and you don't know what's not. But if you're functioning from the heart, people are always, I don't care who you are, that frequency transcends all the rest. So yeah. And also I think that in terms of her legacy being manifested, I think going back to grassroots kinds of engagements
Mhm.
are really critically important. I think people feel really, really tired a lot of times of manufactured ways of communicating. And I think that one-on-one, that person to person is what really gets things done, especially if you're coming from the heart.
Mhm. So many important lessons, so many important lessons that you shared with us this evening. I really hope that all of these ideas are really that we're able to hone in on these things and just see how it all just makes sense, how it makes so much sense that we are very strategic in how we communicate with people and using strategies that bring about, a non-conflict oriented or just removal of the nastiness, the nastiness of a conversation or of an experience, and just find a lighter space. Like talking into the light, like you're constantly moving into the light with the communication, and
Mhm.
that we understand that this communication is not owned by one group,
It's
that
true.
it's owned by so many people, the women that you mentioned from, from Hawaii and just women with Chinese backgrounds, African American background, Latina, Hispanic backgrounds, just able to see that there are so many voices that have power, and that we just have to let that exist in the light, that there's light for that, and that's wonderful,
I think too that for me, I realize how, since the beginning, it seems that women have been the agents of democracy, because in democracy, everyone's voice is valuable. And it is only when everyone's voice is valuable, heard, and acknowledged that true freedom and progress occur.
And teamwork, like our conversation earlier today, you mentioned Delta Sigma Theta, and
Yes.
and many different community organizations where people understood that it was through the power of voices together, and all of these brilliant minds coming together with a central focus and doing something to make a difference, whether it is through a march. And I remember you mentioning that even if Mary Church Terrell had to stand in the back of the line, even if she didn't want to stand in the back, that she was there, that she was present,
Exactly.
and that you find a place to be and to use that power,
Exactly. And I mean, the women of Delta Sigma Theta that were there with her, when younger people look back on it, it really doesn't matter where they were, but they were there. They chose to represent themselves.
And I think and if you don't speak for yourself, sometimes who's going to speak for you? But so there's two pieces. There's two interesting pieces that I'm feeling unfold right now. That the idea that you have this collective group who are able to say, look, we can speak for ourselves, but at the same time, this space where people have to give them a place in the line, understanding that there is a place for me, for you, African American women, that there is a necessary space and space for people to listen and hear us. Like they can hear us. They can hear us talking. I'm saying something and it's meaningful and people hear me. Creating that space for people to hear that, and then also allowing the group to exist. These are some of the things that we have to be willing to do for all different people who are marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be too big to be the only sound in the room.
There we go. Oh, all right now. All right.
We can't be too big. We can't be too big. And I feel all of this uncovering and what you're saying and your legacy. Your legacy in the arts. And so there's a question in the chat about the schools. What can we do in the schools? What can we do, with the children?
Oh man, like,
What can we do with them?
with these beautiful young minds that have the capability to absorb so much so quickly. For me, and this is truly only personal, and I have friends who are educators, and we talk about this all the time. But I said, children are taught all about reading, mathematics, science, and all of that, but the basic thing about how your mind works, which is primary to moving through any situation, we don't teach them. What is judgment? What is kindness? What are these? And they are not too young to know. I've read where they have taught calculus to 3 and 4 year olds. And it's a fact. I also think about our bodies, and I think about our beautiful planet. So to know firsthand, and it's not a big thing to be able to know about what the earth is capable of and why we need to protect it. also our bodies. A lot of times I think we know more about what's on the inside of a machine than we know about what's on the inside of these bodies. You know, so
And
to
just
have,
using the arts, maybe using the arts to show them. I mean, I wonder if you know, what can we do? You know, we talked about a little bit about infusing, you know, voting rights and such into you know, the theater and arts, but what can we do to begin to have all of these different, I call them human capital transmission questions and concerns introduced, so that we bring out this idea that you know, the Black body is not 3/4 of a human being, or that, you know, calculus and math and all of these very important subjects, that they belong to everyone, that everyone can use their minds and their bodies in these types of ways. How can we infuse that in our plays and in the stories, and then the theatrical movement of our words as we engage our children in the schools, or just in our local plays? What are we, who's dropping the ball? Oh, I said it. Who's dropping the ball? Can I be Mary Church Terrell here? You know, who's dropping the ball? You know, who's gonna get this going? Who on
well, you
here
know,
on
like
this call right now is going to get this going, so that we can implement some of these things.
well, I think what has to happen is it depends upon the ingenuity of the storyteller.
Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
And we have a lot of competition.
Mhm.
Social media is deep,
Yes.
but I still contend that a good story is a good story, and it
Mhm.
beats social media anytime and anywhere. So I think it begins with the storytellers
Mhm.
and what they can be challenged to do, to tell, and how it's going to be told. I think the whole way we deal with storytelling is going to change, has changed at a post pandemic. I think we're coming into a new way of doing everything,
Mhm.
and I'm still in the process of figuring out what that's going to look like. We haven't had a play in a year,
Mhm.
and I don't think people are going to be satisfied with the same old, same old.
And the classroom is changing. The classroom is changing too. Yeah. So we have a lot of work to do, don't we? We have a lot of work to do.
It's
And
good work, though.
you've given us so many tools and different things to think about. I wonder if we have any questions in the chat that people would like to introduce now. Are there any special ideas that anybody would like to put forth for me to ask any more questions? No more questions? I love asking questions. So, I mean, I think definitely all the questions have been answered, but I know that you are amazing. You are such an inspiration, and I know that your story it's empowering to me, and I'm going to share your story, and I'm going to learn so much from. I've learned so much from this conversation. It's refreshing. It's absolutely refreshing, and empowering as well, because knowing that someone is willing to have career initiatives and shape them around the growth and development of our people, and to have such passion, and to take on roles that are very difficult, very challenging, and to do so well with it. That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'm so honored to meet you.
I am very honored to meet you also. You know, I can't wait to have a close conversation. And I want you to know that I have to thank my ancestors, and particularly Miss Mary Church Terrell, because she opened the porthole for me to have the kinds of understandings that I have shared tonight, the research, the life, and what it yielded. Amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for taking this time to spend with us after your very, very long day, and for embracing the message, because the message is really what we need. It's really what we need right now. We need the unity, we need the collaboration, we need the understanding, and we need Lizan's strength. You are pouring onto us. You are pouring your strength onto us. And we are so grateful for that. I'm going to pass this microphone over to my friend, Jody Brummage, who will close out the event for us. But I just want to say thank you for me to have the opportunity, not once, but twice, to meet absolutely fabulous and amazing women who can be models for me, so that I can take some type of part of this torch and share it with my friends, and we can try to continue to spread your joy and your love and your compassion with the children and the students that we work with every day. So Jody.
I wanted to say one thing, but excuse me,
Oh.
Jody. I just want to send a shout out to Ed, and to Contemporary American Theater, which I thoroughly miss, and I deeply, deeply value.
Well, thank you both so much. And it is my privilege to join you briefly here to recognize all of the people and organizations that have made this event and series possible. First, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone tonight in sharing my profound gratitude to you, Lizan Mitchell. Your very gracious remarks, your incredible perspective, and your deep understanding of the life and legacy of Mary Church Terrell have enriched us all and given us so much to think about as we continue to examine the struggle for equality in our community and in this country. We are so appreciative of Nicole Davis for uplifting us and inspiring us tonight with your beautiful rendition of the spiritual My Lord, What a Morning. Thank you to Dr. Ray Smock, our interim director at the Byrd Center, for your insightful historical introduction to tonight's subject. And thank you, Dr. Chiquita Howard-Bostic, our Associate Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity here at Shepherd University, for so thoughtfully facilitating our conversation with Lizan. This rich conversation has been such a fitting capstone to our series, Black Women's Struggle for the Vote. The first part of our series, Vanguard, How Black Women Broke Barriers, Won the Vote, and Insisted on Equality for All, with Martha S. Jones, was hosted by us here at the Byrd Center almost 2 weeks ago. And you can view that event on our YouTube channel if you have not yet heard Martha's excellent lecture on the history of the Black women's suffrage movement. This series has been made possible with the most generous support of the Eastern Panhandle Alumni Chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority and the League of Women Voters of Jefferson County, two institutions which embody the power and the continuing leadership of women in breaking barriers and lifting us all a little further on the journey toward equality. The focal point of the story shared tonight, Mary Church Terrell, was an honorary member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, an organization which has been at the forefront of the advancement of Black women's rights in the United States. And I am so grateful to our friends at the Contemporary American Theater Festival who partnered with us at the Robert C. Byrd Center for Congressional History and Education to bring this series to the Shepherd University campus and community. I must thank the wonderful CATF staff who have worked so hard to make this night's virtual event a seamless and enjoyable experience for us viewers and participants alike. Together, the Byrd Center and the CATF are committed to revealing and spotlighting the integral narrative of the diverse, long, and ongoing struggle for equality in our nation, as revealed through scholarship and art. And lastly, I wish to thank you, the viewers, who joined us for this evening and throughout this series. Thank you for taking the time and committing to listening, experiencing, thinking, and learning from this rich history and impactful art. So thank you, everyone, for making this program a reality and for benefiting all of us by your contributions. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for joining us.